Today, we're going to try to break down some of the science behind dyslexia and how it affects the brain. Technically, dyslexia is a learning disability. I really don't like labeling it as a learning disability, but it does affect the written word, the spoken word, and mathematics. So technically, it is a learning disability. So we're going to break down the different ways that the brain processes information. And it's an oversimplification of talking about the brain processing on the right or left side and people being left or right-brained people. But we're going to break that down a little bit because in this example, that simplification will help us understand it a little bit more. The brain is pliable, not just through big hits in sports, but also through substances such as alcohol and other pharmaceuticals. So what we've learned about the brain is through different activities and different things that we consume that you can actually rewire your brain. My personal goal is not to eliminate dyslexia through rewiring my brain, but to rather learn how to enhance the things that are good about dyslexia. So dyslexia primarily uses the right side of your brain. Again, an oversimplification, but the things that you process on the right side of your brain, if you learn how to lean into those things, you can use them for strengths rather than trying to overcompensate for things that you don't have or don't utilize as well on the left side. So one of the great things about our body, the body will naturally send resources to the area in our body that is in most need. So that's why when a woman is pregnant and the baby needs nutrients, the body will deprive the actual mother before it deprives the child. Although you would think that more energy would be sent to the left side of the brain because it's not firing as much, it's actually the opposite. Because the way that the brain is all wired together, it's not that it needs more energy, it's just that the wiring is different. And so again, very complex and trying to simplify it a little bit. But if the wiring is not all the same for a dyslexic and a non-dyslexic, it's just firing differently. It's not that the left side of the brain doesn't work, it's just that it's not as connected with the right side. So the elements on the right side, which are nonverbal cues, intuition, colors, emotion, and creativity. So those are very general ideas and concepts. It's important to understand that everything's connected, but the right side of the brain is the dominant side. And that's why a lot of those nonverbal cues, creativity, and the other things related to the right side of the brain tend to be a little bit more prominent with dyslexic. So I'm going to go over some of the specific things that we already talked about on the right side of the brain. I'm going to start with nonverbal cues. There's a couple things that fall within that category. Emotional processing. That just gives you the ability to process and empathize with people a little bit better than maybe someone that's more left side. Spatial processing. I've noticed in my life, I'm just better at kind of seeing angles and shapes and being able to fit things together. It helps me a lot with my business, being able to fit pieces where they need to go. Creativity and imagination. That's something we've already talked a lot about. We'll talk a lot more about that. Tons of creative people are dyslexic. Obviously, you don't have to be dyslexic to be creative, but it's just very popular. There are some ways that the left side of your brain also helps with some nonverbal cues. Example, language processing. I've always struggled a little bit with language processing, especially in our modern world where people speak fast and maybe use slang words and just don't speak clearly. Interconnected processing and analytical thinking sometimes kind of go together. At least I kind of view them as going together. My wife is very analytical, very 1, 2, 3, and it kind of connects all that together. Honestly, it's hard for me to speak too much about it because I just don't see the world that way. I'm very open-minded, very broad thinking. And when I get around other people that just are kind of the opposite of that, it's interesting to see those contrasts. When you have them side by side, it's very obvious the difference. Another thing that is highly impacted on the right side of the brain is creativity. Creativity is an incredible thing, and I've loved seeing how that manifests specifically in people like my daughter, who's dyslexic. She's very, very creative, incredible writer, just incredible thinker, being a visionary, being able to see things, and that plays into that creativity. You're able to just see the possibilities. That's being able to pick up on those other things we talked about, the nonverbal cues and the spatial reasoning, and you're able just to kind of see it, and then you just kind of know, you can have intuition about how all those things come together. And that can really help with creativity because you're almost in your subconscious, almost putting those things together. It's just helping you see things differently than the people around you. Holistic thinking, that's just the ability to see big picture and also seeing how the big picture all works together. I hear holistic a lot when it comes to medicine and stuff. And the idea behind that is that you're letting everything kind of work together for one general cause. And holistic thinking when it comes to creativity is you're able to just see the whole picture, and then you're able to draw all those things in together and just create this really cool story or business plan, or however it affects you in your personal life. Final thing I'll touch on is colors. It's speculated that colors are primarily processed on the right side as well. And this is something that's been discussed for a long time. I remember when I was a kid, they would actually take these clear colored pieces of plastic and lay it over the words or over the book, and you would actually read it through different colors. And we had different colors that we would try. It's kind of funny. I remember red was the primary thing that they thought helped me the most, but some of the other kids, they had green and yellow and this and that. Honestly, I don't think it really helped that much. I think it was more of a mental thing, and I'd be like, oh, I want my red sheet so it can help me read better. There's a lot of little tricks, placebo things you can do to help. The science is pretty iffy on that as far as if it actually helps, but I think it's interesting. And again, the brain is a very complex thing, and dyslexia is so about the brain. I think there's going to be so much more that we learn about dyslexia in the coming years with all of the breakthroughs that we're seeing in science, the things that they're doing with like Neuralink and things like that. It's going to be really interesting to see what they say about dyslexia. There's no standard way the brain works. Just keep learning and keep adapting.